To start the expansion, we saw our heavenly city known as Dalaran completely blown to bits. And now we've seen that Khadgar has in fact returned. What does that mean, though? Does that mean we'll eventually get a Dalaran's return? Who knows? Now, Dalaran was rubble, so I don't think we'll get an exact replica of what we had before, but maybe a rebuilding of Dalaran. I mean, it happened in the past. Dalaran's been destroyed before, and hey, maybe with a little bit of magic we could see it happen. Dalaran will return, but much bigger, says Doran. Let's see what evidence he has for this piece of news.
Right at the start of War Within, Dalaran was destroyed and we lost the most iconic city in the game, but that is very likely not the actual end. Not only is it possible that Dalaran was teleported, but Dalaran in the floating form is only really a recent invention, and as you may know, it existed as a city-state around Lordran for 1,000 years. Seeing that we're returning there in midnight to save the planet from a void invasion, we may be going back to actual Dalaran. Gilneas, Undercity, the Arati Highlands have already been set up for a very likely revamp, so going back to actual Dalaran as a kingdom seems highly plausible. So what is going on? If you guys want to buy Total War, Elder Scrolls, or any other game, you can get them at great prices with my Gamivo link. You can also get anything Warcraft related, gift cards and software, and all below market prices.
Get those.
Best of all, if you...
By the way, Dalaran being rebuilt, as I said before, obviously destroyed a long time ago by the Burning Legion. So who knows whether or not it actually gets rebuilt in its previous form. But I have said it before, that giant crater, I hope one day they just rebuild Dalaran out of there. I would love to see Dalaran return to the ground and actually be built out fully in the original forest, its original location, and actually be bigger than it was. Because if you look at Dalaran, honestly, it was always a small, very small city in its floating form. But in its ground form, back in the lore, that place was huge, and I would like to see it that way.
If you add my code DORAN, you can get an even bigger discount, so make sure to check out my link in the description and get some amazing deals with Gamivo. So you've all seen the destruction of Dalaran, which was essentially supposed to be a Broken Shore 2.0, a little touch from Chris Metzen to repeat some of the storylines from Legion, and while I feel like it was actually great, I don't really feel like it hit much the same note as the Broken Shore was far more devastating,
that
where
destroyed
it
I
really
forgot.
felt like a genuine loss. However, in the interview, Chris Metzen was talking about how the entire point of the Khadgar and Dalaran storyline was to create some stakes.
Archimonde, yeah, it was Archimonde. He did the whole sand thing where he destroyed Dalaran. Yes, it was Archimonde that destroyed Dalaran. That's right.
Continue to lose a little bit more throughout the World Soul Saga, which I personally think is great because that is really the biggest problem with an expansion like Dragonflight. There, they really toned it down, but then literally nothing felt like a major threat, just some bunch of dragon drama and random just introduced loose cannon Primal Incarnate that was promptly defeated. Dalaran, on the other hand, did really bring back some of that Legion flavor. However, seeing that Khadgar already returned a few weeks after release, I don't feel like it hit the same mark. It wasn't that big of a sacrifice, but it was obviously bold.
Look, I'll be honest, maybe they should have held off on Khadgar's return a little bit longer. I mean, he was gone, but only for like a month, right? And then we got the quest line where he came back. It wasn't even a month, it felt like. What up, Deganja? So mainly, you know, with his return, yeah, it didn't feel like as big of a sacrifice. Same with Anduin. I mean, he had the moment where he jumped off the ship. You know, oh, it's just like his father. He was going to sacrifice himself. He was back like in a week. So, I mean, yeah, were they going to kill them? I don't know. Killing some main characters sometimes does bring more, I don't know, makes the expansion feel more real. Like when Varian died early on, I was like, oh, shit. Legion ain't playing around. We're killing off main characters here. We gotta get this, you know, get deeper to the story. I wanted to kill Gul'dan so badly at that point. Here, we've had some heroes die, but they all seem to come back. Big sacrificial moments, but everyone's okay. That's, I don't know. We'll see in the end if actually anybody ends up dying for real.
After release, I don't feel like it hit the same mark. It wasn't that big of a sacrifice, but it was obviously bold of them to actually destroy Dalaran. Last time Dalaran was destroyed was by Arthas back in Warcraft 3, and since then it was our main base of operations. This is the place we used to fight the Lich King. This is the place we used to defeat the Legion. It's pretty safe to say that Dalaran is really the most iconic city in the game, as it was the main hub when WoW was at its peak, and almost everyone has fond memories of Dalaran and the music and the, you know, running flying around in circles of Dalaran, so destroying it was indeed a big shock. However, I still wouldn't say Dalaran was destroyed as a 100% confirmed fact, and that parts of it
And this is the Archimon video when he destroyed it. Now, he says this the last time it was destroyed was by Arthas. I actually thought it was by Archimon, but maybe I was wrong.
Still potentially remain. I think it's very likely that parts of it were teleported within the Void Realm, and we could see some future twisted version of it. Based on the lore we got post the resurrection of Khadgar, it appears Xal'Tath was absorbing the arcane magic, and Khadgar even turned himself into arcane in order to survive. However, this void spell that Xal'Tath casted is unlike anything we had ever seen before. As people were saying, if we didn't see Khadgar die in this...
You know what it kind of looks like? This void spell kind of looks like that boss in... what's it called? The Dawnbreaker dungeon, right? You know the Dawnbreaker dungeon where she does her spell and it starts to expand. You got to fly off the ship and come back. It looks very much similar to that in terms of animation. Now, that spell doesn't destroy the Dawnbreaker when she does it, so maybe it's less powerful or whatever, but it certainly one-shots you if you touch it.
If we didn't see Khadgar die in the cinematic, it's likely that he survived, and these people were right. I would say a similar logic can be used for the city of Dalaran as well. Xal'Tath casted a gigantic void circle around the city that engulfed the core and most of it, and then Dalaran exploded into a bunch of rubble with parts falling into Khazakar itself. Now, you could say this is proof that Dalaran was indeed fully destroyed, but my theory is that the core of the city, the most magically potent part, was taken into the Void Realm, while the rest was obviously blown to pieces, as we have seen with our own eyes. If you look at Dalaran, you will see that the city is like 1/3 of the entire landmass. The majority is just floating earth that is supporting the structure of the actual city. Without a doubt, parts of Dalaran were obviously destroyed, hence the fallen structure on Khazakar, but I feel like with Xal'Tath, it's very likely that the core survived and was teleported somewhere within the Void Realm. Based on the Telegraph's Rift and Xal'Tath's travel, it's likely she has a Void base somewhere within the Void Realm itself that we will reach.
Who knows? It could be where we fight her. It could be the final raid where we end up seeing her. She could have like a Void version of Dalaran. Yeah, I could totally see that.
Point could even be a remnant of something like Aresh, and this could be used for future raid content. For example, it would be interesting to see a Void twisted Dalaran or parts of Dalaran just scattered around some future Void raid, which would obviously be good story development.
Yeah, exactly.
To
would
really
be cool.
Feel like the Void is destroying Azeroth as we know it. However, when I said that Dalaran is likely coming back, this is not what I meant. I didn't mean we would go into the Void Realm to find this twisted Dalaran and just teleport it back and rebuild. Now, Dalaran is certainly lost in its current form, there's no doubt about that. What is really important to remember though is that this Dalaran that was lost only really existed for like 2 decades. What a lot of people forget was that Dalaran was one of the 7 human kingdoms, and it was a city-state, a very powerful one at that as well. Originally, it was located by Lordamir Lake, which was technically Lordaeron. It was a massive...
Yeah, my first interaction with Dalaran ever in the game was actually here. You know, as an Alliance player, if you played Alliance, you know this. You used to run by it when you used to try to go back to do the Scarlet Monastery dungeons, right? Like all the Scarlet Monastery dungeons, you had to foot it over there probably because you were like level 37, 38 or whatever. You could have been 41, but didn't have enough gold to buy your mount at the time because that was a thing back then too. But you would foot your way by this giant purple bubble. And it wasn't even see-through like this. It was like just very much this like big swirling purple bubble. And the first time I ran by it, I remember like wondering, what the hell is this? And eventually I looked it up and did some digging and found out, oh, this is like a magical city that was destroyed in the Archimon cinematic and eventually, you know, rebuilt, floated up to the sky and that kind of stuff. They were rebuilding it. So I was always wondering, like, what the hell? Where is this city? This magical city? And eventually we would see it in Wrath of the Lich King. But before then, this was my interaction with Dalaran. I was only knowing it as this, you know, giant crater purple bubble thing.
Lordamir Lake, which was technically Lordaeron, it was a massively powerful city-state destroyed by Arthas and the Scourge, and some scrapped remains were picked up and magically moved into the air, and we got the iconic Dalaran as we know it. The original Dalaran, though, would have been much bigger, much more powerful, and more resembling a kingdom, and this is what I'm saying, it's likely going to come back in WoW Midnight. Ooh. So all of you know that WoW Midnight is going to be based in the Eastern Kingdoms. Chris Metzen talked about a return to the old world, but realistically what this meant was that we will be returning to this part of the old world, not that the entire old world is going to get revamped. The big revamp of Goltalas was confirmed. It was also confirmed that it won't be just a mod.
They're also saying it's not just a revamp, but it's in fact a rebuild. Like they are going to rebuild. I think Silvermoon's going to be the hub city for the Midnight expansion. You know, it's supposed to be an expansion about elves and reuniting the elves and all. So I could imagine that they make Silver Moon a cross-faction hub city for sure. I mean, you got literally void elves and you got void elves and high elves on the Alliance that would call this place home, and then obviously you got the blood elves on the Horde. So both factions could easily, you know, figure out a way to come to the city through the storyline. But it's not just Silvermoon getting rebuilt. It's actually they're talking about the entire upper half of the Eastern Kingdoms, which I guess would include Dalaran. So that's very much possible, and Lordaeron. Who knows? Maybe Lordaeron sees a rebuild at some point. But Dalaran being rebuilt in this timeline could certainly happen. It's a magical city. Hey, you know, how did you rebuild it so fast? Blizzard could easily say it's magic. It's magic. The mages did it. Yep, that would totally work.
Model update process. They're going to enlarge Quel'Thalas, possibly add new settlements. It is going to be significantly enhanced. Now, realistically, Quel'Thalas is actually not that big. It's technically 2 zones with a little island at the top, and I don't doubt they are going to enlarge this, maybe add another zone for the Amani, for example. But even then, there would be like 3-4 zones in total. And for example, Khazakar technically has 5, as we're going to discover the 5th one soon. And there's usually like 6 in a full WoW expansion. So the point is, it's highly likely they're going to enlarge the entire part of the northern eastern kingdoms.
Yeah, this is where I see it right here. This division line, I think everything from here on up is probably getting revamped or rebuilt in some way. And this is where we're going to basically, this upper part of the Eastern Kingdoms will basically be the expansion land for the Midnight expansion.
Around this line and then just update it
I just got to stop pausing the video.
Recently been set
Let the man
We
cook.
recently had entire quest lines with the Forsaken reclaiming their lands, proclaiming themselves as new Lordaeron, and forging a new identity post-Sylvanas. Then right around the same time, we had a quest line where the Vorgen have finally reclaimed Gilneas and returned to their home they haven't been able to visit since the Cataclysm. Now, people have been, and rightfully so, saying that these quest lines were underwhelming, but I think the reason is because they were only really there to set the ground for Midnight and the revamp that is going to happen. It was pretty much impossible that Blizzard would revamp Undercity and Gilneas in a single patch just to update these races, seeing that Silvermoon is the most outdated city in the game. On the other side, we got Strom, which is the former capital of the Arati Empire that was literally rebuilt, and like Strom is actually functioning as an alliance city right now, but it's not actually available in the game. Now, we got these Arati humans, this Light Emperor, these Arati that consider themselves the original empire. I feel like the Arati Highlands and Strom are going to be as relevant as possible in WoW Midnight.
Yeah, now here's another thing though. Like, okay, so if they redo the upper part of the Eastern Kingdoms, you're talking about Dalaran, Lordaeron, Stromgarde, obviously Silvermoon, even the Zandalari. You can talk about like, not the Zandalari, sorry, the, oh my god, what's their name? Amani. The Amani trolls and their city getting rebuilt. You might wonder, I think they might even join the Horde at some point, but I'm going off on a tangent here. But you might wonder, like, why would Blizzard rebuild all these cities for an expansion? Maybe Silvermoon makes sense, could be the hub city, but what about the others? You know what I think it could be? All the Gilneas and all these cities getting redone? Player housing. I actually think we could get, like, some type of player housing thing in the game, and that's why they're revamping all these cities. I really do. I think we might even get the Goblin City in one of these patches coming up here in the Midnight expansion, right? Like we could see Undermine and all that shit coming soon. And why would you introduce all these cities to the game if you're never going to use them? I think player housing is the answer. I really do. I think that's what's going to happen.
A big point is
maybe
that
in
the
Midnight,
world
maybe
invasion
not, but I think it will eventually.
But it's so unlikely that the world invasion, void invasion, where Azeroth awakens is going to just be localized to Quel'Thalas in like 2 zones, and will almost certainly spread to at least the northern part of the Eastern Kingdom. So based on this, imagine that Gilneas is going to get an actual update. We might get Undercity, but not a city in the sewers, but potentially a settlement where the capital of Lordaeron once was, and we will also get the Arati storyline alongside the main storyline that is going to be about Quel'Thalas as well. Now, this is where Dalaran comes in. Dalaran was technically our beacon for the times Azeroth was in the worst of troubles. It saved us against the Lich King, it saved us against Sargeras, it now led us to Khazakar. I certainly feel like there is going to be much the same sentiment. Furthermore, Dalaran is something like a beacon for all magic users as well. Other than Dalaran, the other magic settlement of Azeroth is the Sunwell and Silvermoon, which is going to get attacked by the Void, so it makes sense that all the magic users might retreat to New Dalaran as it would be further away from the front line. I'm not sure if they would, of course, raise an entire city from the ground up overnight, but I do feel like some sort of a half-built version of Dalaran is possible, and the Dalaran could be a pretty big base of operations for an expansion like WoW Midnight. I've been talking about Dalaran coming down from the sky for years now, as there was no point for it to keep floating around the Broken Isles, but seeing that it was now taken down from the sky, this could be what is coming next. Keep in mind, all the mages and arcane users will definitely need a new city, a new refuge, and honestly, right now I can only see Silvermoon opening up to everyone, with a quarter of it being neutral and just for magic users, or Dalaran getting back to its original state. Thank you for watching. Check out what Samiccus possessed by out there by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on Perun and Slavic mythology by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
I actually think it's more likely that we get a Silvermoon hub city than a Dalaran hub city. Again, it would be funny. It would be a meme. It already is a meme, but to make Dalaran come to the ground and make that our hub city would be funny. You see Silvermoon being cross-faction as insulting. I don't know. I think it's going to happen. I do, and I don't think it's that insulting. It makes sense in the lore. It's not that far of a stretch, honestly. We've already seen it in-game before, that Illyria was allowed to... She's obviously Alliance aligned. She was allowed to return to Silvermoon, and now that backfired, right? She has basically summoned the Void through the Sunwell by accident. But she was allowed to return. So, like, these things have happened. The Blood Elves themselves don't necessarily see High Elves, you know, their former selves or whatever, as being like this this thing that they need to spit on, this despicable thing. They do interact with each other quite a lot, and they don't see each other necessarily as enemies. They still see each other as very much the same. That was her home, though. It's different. Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying, though. They are in the Alliance, so if they're going to be allowed to return, you gotta. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And God, who's their leader right now? The Night Elf, the Blood Elves, I should say. Who's there? I always forget. Lorthamar. Yeah, Lorthamar is actually a great leader. He's very even-headed. He's very knowledgeable. He's actually probably one of my favorite, if not my favorite, leaders on the Horde. And he's even thought about rejoining the Alliance at some points. Right? When all the shit was going down with Garrosh, he did think about returning to the Alliance. Now, some things went on in the background that stopped that from happening. But Lorthamar teamed up with Jaina back in the day, too. When we were fighting... When we were fighting back in Legion, we saw some of the MBFA, actually. So there's a lot of moments where the Blood Elves in particular have kind of cross-factioned a little bit. So I don't see it that crazy. I wouldn't see it to be this insane thing if Silvermoon did in fact become a hub city for both. And by the way, Dalaran, also originally an Alliance city. Like, yes, it's always been a place where people who practice magic can go. But if you remember early on in Wrath of the Lich King, and it was like a big deal for the Horde to show up in Dalaran and actually have a settlement in Dalaran. That was a big thing. So it's happened before, and it'll happen again.